Steve.
Well, thank you all for coming here. I know some of you, and some of you I don't know. I'm in the middle of towards the beginning of a kind of a 14-city and 14-day death march promoting my book. So I'm tired. I'll admit it. And we had a gigantic crowd at CU Boulder last night, and the night before we were in a smaller crowd, but it was in Lodo. And then I get to go home tomorrow for almost 11 hours. Then it's off to I forget, Seattle, San Francisco, St. Louis, I forget all that. What I'm going to do is just explain a little bit about the new book that is out. This is my second book. It's the first book was with the largest publisher in New York, St. Martin's, and it came out in 2006. And the new book is with a smaller publisher based in New York and in Los Angeles, but we have the rights to the book ourselves. We don't have to share it with anybody else. The book is called No Snowflake in an Avalanche. It's based on the Voltaire quote, no snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible. And you can see the book here. The publisher did a great job with the three-dimensional blood that you can see on the cover of the book. The snow and the avalanche and all the rest of the stuff. The bottom line is I wrote the book for two reasons. One was to update everybody as to where we were from the first book in our fight. And by our, I'm the president and founder of the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. We're a civil rights organization that protects the rights of members of the U.S. military and veterans in the U.S. military. We have, as of a few hours ago, we get hundreds more each month, but the current ticker is at 27,112 U.S. members, sailors, soldiers, Marines, and airmen, cadets and midshipmen, ROTC and Service Academy, veterans, Coast Guard, National Guard, reservists. 96%, it's just an amazing number, of our clients are Protestants and Roman Catholics, being told that they're not Christian enough. I'm not here to convince you that the problem exists, because it does exist. I'm here to explain, that we have the book that's out, try to get you to buy the book so that you'll understand our message and maybe buy more than one so you can give it to people that need it. People that have bad breath, no one has trouble dropping off a bottle of scope in front of them or something like that in this clandestine way. But this, again, we're fighting something much worse than halitosis with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. It's extremely controversial, unfortunately. We've have to deal with my family with hits that have been put on us. We've had animals slaughtered and put on the front porch of our house. The windows have been shot out of our house. We had, I think it was 46 death threats for the first night of this event in Lodo. We had 17 at CU Boulder, and so far today we've had 0 here, which is really freaking out. I'd be more comfortable, and our security people would be more comfortable if we would get our usual threats, but we haven't had any. It's kind of amazing.
There are some places you can go,
Being against us, and we have a lot of people that are, particularly in this town. I tell people all the time, well, Mikey, we're going to have to agree to disagree. And my response to that is that that's bullshit. I mean, that's how every war, rape, and murder starts, agreeing to disagree. Disagreeing with my position and our position would be the same as disagreeing with someone who says it's not a good idea to pour gasoline on newborn German Shepherd puppies and lighting them up. I mean, this is not a question of, well, I think it's an interpretation of the Constitution. No, that's bullshit. Our clients, and we have 363 now at the Air Force Academy. We added a new one in the last 24 hours. That's a lot of clients there. They will tell you that this is not an issue of them misinterpreting things. We have that is not the situation. We had only 19 clients at West Point until 3 weeks ago, when 3 or 4 weeks ago, when West Point decided to invite a particular well-known fundamentalist Christian, former 3-star general, to speak at the National Prayer Breakfast. And we had 27 members of the faculty of West Point and 75 cadets reach out to us. So now we have 122 clients there. We have 11 at Annapolis. Annapolis is terrible, but it's kind of static. And we're in the media somewhere every day, all the time. We have a large religion called the Chaplaincy of Full Gospel Churches that we're suing. We should go to court if we survive their motion for summary judgment the first week of June. They are what's called an ecclesiastical endorsing agency, which means that you can't be a chaplain in the military unless a religion endorses you to be a chaplain. If you're a Catholic chaplain, it means the Catholic, the Archdiocese for the military endorses you. If you're a rabbi, there's a Jewish organization, etc. The Chaplaincy of Full Gospel Churches endorses just under, get this, 300 military chaplains in the Navy, Army, and Air Force. The Marine Corps uses Navy chaplains. They're a fine organization. Of course, they've called for the assassination of Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Chris Dodd, Joe Biden. And I don't know why they get certified by the Pentagon to be a religion, but they would. About 3.5 years ago, they started very publicly praying to Jesus to slaughter my wife Bonnie and my children and myself, to, let me get this right, plunder our fields, seize our assets, and to wipe our descendants off the face of the earth for 10 generations. They're not that smart because you really only need one generation, because then they're going to be, you don't just spontaneously generate Weinstein. I don't know where they got the 10 generation thing, but it's actually, they're praying Psalm 109. They believe they have a First Amendment right to do this, and Anderson Cooper from CNN referred to this as trolling for assassins for the Weinsteins. The dean at the U.S. Air Force Academy, Brigadier General Dana Bourne, lied under oath about 3 months ago during a deposition we took for an important lawsuit on behalf of one of our clients, who happens to be an evangelical Christian and a 13-year veteran professor at the Academy, when she said that she'd never ordered a counterinsurgency, or never used the term counterinsurgency, with regard to anything going on at the Air Force Academy. Unbeknownst to her, we had knowledge that she had in fact issued a written order on a performance evaluation to one of her full colonels who worked for her, a department head, who had a significant background in counterinsurgency. Do you all know what a counterinsurgency is? It's okay. An insurgency is a war. The British, when we fought the War of Independence, viewed General Washington as an insurgent. We view the insurgency in Iraq and the Mujahideen, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, the insurrectionists as insurgents. So Cornwallis and King George issued a counterinsurgency, which was the war against George Washington. So ordering a counterinsurgency against my foundation in writing in a performance evaluation and lying about it under oath, although it was in reverse order, means that you've ordered a war against me and my clients. And we don't like that a lot. Our clients like it less. So we have that we're dealing with. The book is bifurcated in that it gives, it's really a primal scream. It gives the stories of a number of our clients, one of whom is in the room today. It's horrific to read this stuff. It also tells you the toll that it takes on a family to do this. I didn't want to become a public figure. I mean, when I was in 3rd grade, I used to practice signing autographs, so, because I knew I was going to make the major leagues, which I could have done. I just wanted to go to law school, much worse, right? And there are people in this room that have known me and my family for decades, and well before we became public figures. And it's hard when you go above the horizon. What is it like? I think the book explains it. My wife says that, among other things, you have to be prepared to bite the hand that feeds you, which is hard to do. It's speaking truth to power. And I asked you in this room, if you're here on a Saturday, probably many of you have done it, but ask yourselves how many of you have ever actually truly spoken truth to power, to a boss, to a teacher, to a spouse, somebody where you can, the moment you do it, you turn yourself into a tarantula on a wedding cake. And we all know how long those last, right? They don't last very long. And it's very hard remember what Frederick Douglass said, the great abolitionist, that power concedes nothing without a demand. If you're not prepared to demand, forget about it. So you better be prepared, if you do this, to lose family and friends, classmates. I probably won't be coming to my 35th reunion this year. I'm constantly reminded by the press, and particularly anonymous phone calls to my house, that I'm probably the least favorite son of the Air Force Academy and the most despised graduate. Does that bother me? No. But it kind of pisses me off that when my wife answers the phone and has to be told once again that they're going to blow my head off and cover her in my blood. They're going to rape my daughter and all the other stuff that happens. But in addition to biting the hand that feeds you, and the book explains this, you have to be prepared. Anybody see that movie 127 Hours? You better be prepared to bite your own arm off. It's hard to do this. This is not like riding I don't know, a unicorn through a cotton candy forest handing out lollipops to little forest animals that are singing in English. This is blood sport. It's hard to do it. But it's harder for our clients because if they stand up and talk, they are completely defenseless. And the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights of our Constitution, which was passed in March of 1791, 15 months after the body of the Constitution was passed in December of 1789, was not passed for the convenience of the majority, which were basically white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males at the time. It was passed to protect the minority from the expected tyranny of the majority. And when you stand up in the U.S. military for your rights, for your religious rights, any rights, but particularly from the perspective of religion, you'll see one thing happen very swiftly. You'll see the tyranny of the majority quickly morph into the tantrum of the majority. And that's why they pretty much come to us. We're an extremely militant organization. The book is very militant. The book is fun to read, not in the carnal or carnival sense, but it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's something that we felt needed to be done. There's no other organization that does what we do. We have 4 Nobel Peace Prize nominations. They're hard to get. Last year was the heaviest nomination year ever for the Peace Prize, and only 54 organizations worldwide were nominated. We lost in 2010. We had 2 nominations. Last year we had 1, we lost. It's given out each year in October. But a week after we lost in October, a prior winner of the Nobel Peace Prize nominated us for 2012. So we'll see what happens in October. But just the nomination thing we're happy about. I tell you that not for self-aggrandizement, but from the perspective that it adds credibility and gravitas to our clients who ail. Last night at the University of Colorado, to my surprise and happiness and joy, we had clients of ours that were U.S. Marines, sailors, soldiers, and airmen that stood up and told what it felt like and why it is that they came to us. Do people always like me? Am I the easiest person to like? I don't give a shit, for one thing. I really don't give a shit about that at all. I'm told that, you know, I like me part of the time, but I'm not running for Congress. I don't care whether I'm not running for fucking election. You know, I'm a civil rights fighter, and when someone is hurting, my job is to kick ass, take names, lay down a withering field of fire, and leave sucking chest wounds on this unconstitutional heart of darkness. And that's what I do. Am I open to criticism? I get criticized because I like death metal. You know, I like Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, you know, Anthrax, Pantera. Those are not diseases, you know. I also like the Beach Boys and Bruce Springsteen. Not as much as the other ones, but I do. You know, people are fascinated with whether how religious I am. You know, well, my last name is not O. Weinstein, so I'm not Irish. You know, I'm Jewish, but I'm not that. I'm not that particularly religious, but this isn't a question about that. This is a question, it's not a political spectrum left or right issue, it's a constitutional right and wrong issue. And our constitutional framers, when they put this country together, looked at European history where most of the horrors that had occurred had been when men of the cloth had been men in political power. They looked at Cromwell in England, they looked at the Salem witch trials, and they said, not here. So they put together this separation of church and state, which of course the religious right, you know, views as a myth like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, which separates physical and metaphysical, spiritual and temporal, church and state. And they did that specifically. But see, they didn't just do it in the Bill of Rights. They did it in the body of the Constitution, which is Clause 3, Article 6, a little known part of the Constitution, unless you fight what we do. And in that, it clearly states that we will never have a religious test for any position in the federal government, ever. And now we have the United States military heavily engaged in spiritual fitness training. Well, you use the word ness, you know, health, you know, smartness, fastness, quickness. You know, it means you have to measure something. You know, can you imagine that on Tuesday, July 12, 2005, on the front page of the newspaper most reviled by the Pentagon, which is what? What paper is the most hated?
New York Times.
The New York Times. We had the #2 ranking general in the Chaplains Corps of the Air Force, later promoted by George W. Bush, you know, not my favorite president, to the 2 stars. He's the current head chaplain. Announced, so you know this had to be fully vetted in the New York Times, that the U.S. Air Force's new policy was to reserve its right to evangelize anyone the Air Force determined to be unchurched. You got to think about that for a second. What are they going to fucking do? Hold up, you know, hold a Geiger counter up to somebody, and if it comes back and says you're this thing called unchurched, why the Air Force will reserve its right not to Catholicize or Judaize or Islamicize or Protestantize or, you know, Buddhaize or Hinduize or atheize or agnosticize or secularize you, but to evangelize you. But we sued them on that. The only thing that the Pentagon, or as we refer to it, the Pentecostal gon, understands, you know, is embarrassment in the media and being dragged into court. And we do that a lot. We have 8 law firms that work for us. One of them is the largest law firm on planet Earth. So, you know, I get criticized for being, for pretty much everything. And that's just inside my own family. Just kidding. You know, for being litigious, yeah, of course we are. We have never had a result administratively within the Air Force that has been remotely satisfactory from the internal, the Inspector General's office, the JAGs or the General Counsel's office, rarely from the chain of command or from the EEO. So we go outside and we go into the media. It must be working because the Washington Post just gave me my own column. I get to write whatever I want twice a month now. I know that really pisses everybody off. So it's going to be great now because I can say my own stuff and I don't have to go and hold hands with a reporter. We break a lot of stories. 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, we broke the story that went viral around the world of the U.S. Marine scout snipers using the Nazi SS flag. Any of you see that story with the American flag? I did 112 interviews in a 36-hour period with the international and national media. About 79 of those were domestic, the rest were the international media. Every reporter I talked to from around the world was completely well aware of what the Nazi SS was. Of the 79 U.S. reporters I talked to, including some of those with Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps Times, about 1 out of 5 had never heard of the Nazi SS. So we don't have a left-leaning media. We have a poorly and they went to good schools. One of them went to Brown, one went to Dartmouth. I mean, it's not that they're stupid, it's just they have not been exposed to it. But if you say Kim Kardashian, they'll all know who that is. They'll all know about Kim. She didn't wear makeup the other day. There's a picture of her, wearing a bra. It went viral because it's Kim Kardashian, who has done, what has she done exactly? I don't know. I think in this fight, the reason that the book is important, if you want to help us, buy the book and buy several. It's not that expensive. It's $18. You can afford it. I think, I don't know what they're selling it for here. Rather than buying it off of Amazon, which I hate, or you can, that's the best thing.
$18.95.
$18.95. Okay. The book chronicles what we're doing and it explains the cost on a family. Do I feel guilty about what I've put my family through? Yeah, I do. They didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for this, but I can't stop doing this now. Not when people are hurting. Am I a hero? I'm the exact opposite of a hero. A hero is and there are some in this room. Some of our clients are heroes. They're here today. But a hero is somebody who does something selflessly. I'm a selfish person. I want blood from the people we're fighting. Are you a hero if you're sitting in a lawn chair on a Saturday afternoon like today, drinking a beer, and you watch a 1-year-old toddle out, into the busy street of your residential area, and you throw the beer down, wasting that golden liquid to go after the baby? No, of course you're not a hero. My perspective, I remember when I was in 2nd grade in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I watched a 3rd grader one day getting the shit kicked out of him by a bunch of 4th graders. And at that age, you're very stratified. 2nd graders didn't do much with 3rd graders and 4th graders. And nobody did anything. That was 1963. And I remember even feeling then, no one did anything. About a year later, it was March of 1964, I was now a 3rd grader. And some of you are old enough to remember the name of a woman by the name of Kitty Genovese, New York City, raped and murdered over a 45-minute period with everybody watching from the apartment buildings and no one did anything. Well, my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Nation, may she rest in peace, an evangelical Christian, I love her to death, really taught me that. She was my Renaissance teacher. She told us to never be like those New Yorkers that watch Kitty Genovese be raped and murdered. All I could think about as a little 8-year-old was what had happened the year before when I watched that 3rd grader. Could I have gotten in there and tried to break it up with those 4th graders? I wouldn't have lasted too long, but I should have done something. And from that day on, I changed as a person. And I got into this fight, which is discussed in this book, because my kids were at the Air Force Academy, and I really have to thank Bill Gibson for this new life, because when his movie came out, the name of which I think it was the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre, or Freddy vs. Jesus. When that came out in February of 2004, the pressure put on the cadet wing at that time to go see the movie was beyond any constitutional constraint that could be imagined. And for the first 9 months, I thought the Academy had just made a mistake. I had a few people come out to me and tell me that things were a little bit overboard. I had no idea about this. My wife and I had given a lot of money to the school. We were very intensely proud of it. It was a transcendent experience for me. My classmates I viewed as brothers. That place was not a school. It was a way of life. And then after 9 months, I began to realize that that this isn't rain that they're throwing at me. They're pissing in my face, and it was time to go to war. So we're at war with the Air Force Academy. We're at war with the U.S. military, but not all of it. We're only at war with a particular part of Christianity that very few people know about, but it's talked about in this book. And I made a mistake with my first book. I wish I could rename it. The first book is called With God on Our Side, One Man's War Against an Evangelical Coup in America's Military. Do you know that in the Military Religious Freedom Foundation, our largest growth area now is evangelical Christians? The only client at the Air Force Academy who's out of the 363 is an evangelical Christian. He's here today. And he's written about in this book. And we have evangelical Christians on our advisory board. They donate heavily to us, and it's our biggest area of clients. Let me give you Mikey Weinstein's 100-second or maybe 102-second dissertation on Christendom, who are fighting. Imagine a circle, and that's Christianity. And I thought that you could draw a line down the middle of it, or since I'm from Albuquerque, that would be the Rio Grande River. And on the left you have, mainline Protestants and Catholics, and on the right you got evangelicals and fundamentalists. And I thought those were the bad guys. The bad guys, mainline Protestants and Catholics follow something called the Great Commandment, which Jesus talks about in the book of Matthew, known as the Sermon on the Mount. Two major things: love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, and heart, and basically enumerates the golden rule: do unto others as you would have others do to you, which was of course codified in the Torah, and even before that, the Code of Hammurabi. That's it, the Great Commandment. When you cross the river to go to the area of evangelicals and fundamentalists, they follow something higher than the Great Commandment. It's called the Great Commission, which is talked about in Mark 16:15 and Matthew 28:19. It's one of the last things Jesus is supposed to have said to his disciples, which is go and make disciples of all nations. So it's a commission. What I didn't know then that I know now is that there's a second Rio Grande that cuts in half this side of the circle, and it goes down the middle. And the evangelicals are on the left and the fundamentalists on the right. Every fundamentalist is an evangelical, but not vice versa. Not every evangelical is a fundamentalist. They both want to turn everybody into this room, if they're not already, into Christians like them. But evangelicals will say, whoa, what? I've got to comport my zeal to proselytize you in accordance with the time, place, and manner restrictions put forth by the U.S. Constitution. Hello, we have one in this country. Israel has no constitution, as an example. And it's construing federal and state case law. Fundamentalists go like that. No. There is no time, no place, no manner in which you can stop me from proselytizing. That's why they're constitutional derelicts and outlaws, and they are the Christian version of the Taliban. What are we fighting in one sentence? A fanatical religiosity known as fundamentalist Christianity or dominion Christianity mixed in with actual weapons of mass destruction, ladies and gentlemen. We have them. The other side doesn't have them yet. Mixed in with a tortured, misguided version of patriotism, totally unfettered access due to the draconian specter of military command influence, a total dearth of any restraint, oversight, and supervision, and you've got what is not a problem, issue, or challenge on this late Saturday afternoon that I'm talking to you about, but a national security threat internally to this country, every bit as much in formidability, width, breadth, and magnitude as what we're facing externally by a resurgent Taliban and Al-Qaeda, the insurrectionists, the Mujahideen, and those folks that we're fighting on, whether they be Sunni or mostly Sunni, and Shia terrorists. That's exactly what we're dealing with, and it's internal. I know it sounds crazy, but you read the book and you see what's there. My publisher decided to publish some of the filthy letters and the really good ones in the back of the book, and you'll see those that are there. The really bad ones are sitting with the FBI, and we probably average on a non-major news week between 8 to 12 grotesque death threats a week. As I mentioned, in the last 2 days, whatever 46 and 17 adds up to. I'm not a math major. 63, and then 0 today. And then I don't know. We have to rely on our good friends in law enforcement. When I'm on this book tour, my own personal bodyguard. Some of you have met before, Anthony Burnside. Besides me and my family, guards Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, Eminem. He was with Whitney Houston 3 weeks ago. I hope we get a better result for me. And who else? And Lady Gaga. And their group sees us of having we have a much higher profile, threat profile than any of these other real celebrities have. And it's not fun. It's not something that I look forward to. But it's just the nature of the way things are. So when people say, "Well, Mikey, you're making all this stuff up," no, that's fine. We can agree to disagree. No, go light some puppies on fire and tell me there's nothing wrong with that. We know that this is true. Our clients know that it's true. I'm not going to point them out today. If they want to talk to you after I finish talking, we sign some books, or I'll do some Q&A, or if they want to talk on their own, they can do it. But this exists, and it's something that when you tell somebody that they lack integrity, character, honor, honorability, courage, and intelligence because of their chosen religious faith, ladies and gentlemen, or lack thereof, there is no difference between that and, for instance, telling somebody they're stupid because of their skin color or because they're a female. It's exactly the same thing. Except in this instance, we're dealing with, we look exactly like the 10th version of the prior 9 iterations of the Crusades. When we act like fundamentalist Christian crusaders, which is exactly the way we act, we do the 3 E's, and the 3 E's kill our troops. Witness the burning of the Quran the last week, last 10 days. I released an op-ed about this about 24 hours ago. And the 3 E's are, number one, when we look like fundamentalist Christian crusaders, which is almost all the time, all the time, we enrage our Islamic allies, we embolden our Islamic enemies, and we eviscerate all the good order and discipline that we have in our own U.S. military. We destroy the morale. And that's what we're dealing with. I've been on the cover of every magazine from Harper's to Hustler. I actually had a 2.5-hour lunch with Larry Flint, and the title of the cover story, you can see it, January 2 years ago, was Mikey Weinstein, Jesus and the Generals. The story started on page 38. My parents had never heard of the magazine, but they heard that I was, in it, so they went to a bookstore like this. They went through the first 37 pages to get to. I got this call from my dad that my mother was, defibrillating. It was actually a pretty good story, but even I was somewhat shocked, but only for a minute or two. I try to find some sense of humor in this because I noticed that when the people I'm fighting, that we're fighting, the fundamentalist Christians, seem to lack 2 things. They might have intelligence in an area like electrical engineering or archaeology, but they don't have overall human street smart intelligence. They just don't. And secondly, they have no sense of humor. They just don't have, they don't. They have that look on their face like, we have the good news and you don't. And there's a small part of us that is happy that you don't, And I mean, I could go on for a very, very, very long time. The best part of this is when I do the Q&A. I appreciate the fact that all of you came out. If you want to help, and if you don't, then I know the dark side always sends somebody when I speak around the country, and I speak everywhere. So, and I guarantee you, a few hours from now, we're going to see on the internet a blog about that evil Mikey Weinstein, son of Satan, or father of Satan, who said these following things. You should still buy the book if you're from Focus, because this is great opposition research for you. And I promise you that the book will be, but it's actually got color pictures in there. But it's a 3-dimensional way of explaining who we are, what our family's gone through, what it feels like to be a regular American family, and then have something like this happen. What the cost is. It doesn't make us any better than anybody else at all. It chronicles what it feels like to go from being not in the public eye to being so much in the public eye that we have to carry weapons wherever we go. We have our own security wherever we go. We have attack-trained dogs wherever we go. We have to sit certain ways in restaurants. We have to drive home different directions when we come back. We have to think about this all the time, because we have the constancy of these attacks. And yet there's a 1-star general at the Air Force Academy who's walking around free who ordered a goddamn war against my foundation. Why? What? I hardly find her to be the aggrieved party. Why? And why was it that the one client that came out at the Air Force Academy who has a disability requiring a service dog, like my wife who has multiple sclerosis, we have a service dog. Why was that dog poisoned? Why was there an assassination attempt on an innocent animal at the Air Force Academy? Why have those people not been brought to justice, although there's apparently a dozen suspects? Why? Why has never anyone, to my knowledge, even received a letter of counseling, or even been forced to eat a plate of strawberry or chocolate cupcakes until they're so stuffed they feel a little bit of discomfiture as punishment? What we need are exactly, the Romans had this right. When you cut off somebody's head and stick it on a pole, it changes behavior. Well, we don't lop off heads anymore, but I want about, how many Greeks were there at the Battle of Thermopylae, right? There were 300. So I need 300 court-martials where people will lose their liberty and be thrust into incarceration, and maybe that will actually do something. But we're not going to stop doing it. I did an interview. We do a lot of media interviews on these tours, and I did a long interview with an evangelical TV network Thursday or Friday, I forget. What is this Sunday? This is Saturday, right?
Saturday.
Okay, right. And it was supposed to go half an hour, and the crew and the moderators, I'm sure, when I walked in, figured, oh my God, it's this monster. And we went like an hour and a half, and they were great. And at the end of it, you know, they bought the book and they said, you know, we support what you're doing. You know, I know that they still believe I'm going to burn eternally in hell, and that's okay with me, and that's okay with them. It really is. But they understand now that this isn't about their interpretation of Jesus. We fight as hard for our evangelical Christian clients as we do for our atheist clients. We have many of those. Of the 4% of our clients that aren't Christians, the largest group are atheists and agnostics. If my last name was Smith or Jones and not Weinstein, and if I was a plumber as opposed to being a lawyer, I don't think we would catch 99.9% of the shit that we catch. But you know, when you're Jewish and you're a lawyer and you speak out, and it can be easily deliberately miscast as fighting against Jesus, well, you're one of those Pharisees. You know, we all know what the Pharisees did. Now, the Romans may have actually been the ones that did the whipping, but it was those evil Jews behind it. And speaking of evil Jews, I mean, I'm not at all. I'm hated by AIPAC. The Anti-Defamation League, which I refer to as the Apologist Defense League, they don't like us much. You know, there's an incredible axis between conservative Jews and right-wing fundamentalist Christians. It's amazing. And you know, and unless I'm asked to opine on my view about Israel, when Israel had its incursion into Gaza, I criticized it as a private citizen. You know, I don't wake up each day waiting for my orders on the email coming in from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Go ask somebody who's Irish, as I asked O'Reilly, you know, does Dublin, do you wake up each day to see what the orders from Dublin are? You know, and to me, I tell people, I'm not an American Jew. That's an insult to me. I'm a Jewish American. And when fundamentalists write about the fact that among the 100,000 reasons I'm an idiot and stupid is because I don't get the fact that this country was founded as a Christian nation, I always surprise them. And I tell them, no, you're right. America was founded as a Christian nation. But not the United States of America. There's a big difference. They had religious freedom in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. If you disagreed with them, you were free to leave. But not in the United States of America. This is a secular, get over it nation. Christianity has no special legal significance in this country over even Satanism. I hope everybody gloriously celebrates whatever faith they want to. That isn't the point. The point is you cannot engage the machinery of the state, the awesome financial power and heft of the federal government, particularly where all the sticks and stones are that break our bones, the U.S. military, to push your religious view and give you an inordinate advantage over anybody else with your religious perspective. I mean, we've seen the full spectrum. There's the tacit slight nuance of your commander or senior person inviting you over to burn some burgers, have a couple of beers, and some good Christian fellowship, which may seem like nothing to you, but that I assure you, that it hurts and burns inside, because our clients are generally, we view them as spiritual rape victims. They are not, grow a thicker skin. It's a Christian country. And then we have the stories of one of our clients, David Winters, whose father is a well-known architect in the Washington, D.C. area. David didn't have the greatest high school career. His father loved the U.S. Marines, so in order to please his dad, he went down and joined the Marines. And he went through basic training at a place called Parris Island, which is very tough. But David happened to be Jewish, and that did not sit well with the number of the fundamentalist Christian DIs down there at Parris Island. Any of you see the movie Full Metal Jacket? Ever see that one? Yeah. Think of the first part of it. He had a DI just like that, and several of them. We had many Marine first-hand accounts of when he was doing push-ups. They would kick him in the back of the head, smashing his face down on the pavement, splitting like a ripe tomato. He went through unbelievable hell, and the DI's goal was to get David to renounce his Judaism and to accept and become the right type of Christian. He held out as long as he could, but a few days before he actually made it through Parris Island, he did forsake his Judaism and converted to Christianity. He did not tell his family. He did that when he came home over the weekend, and he went for a walk with his dad to tell him. His dad was wearing a Marine Corps sweater, and that's the last thing David remembers, right after he stabbed his father to death 67 times. At trial, no one brought up the defense of what happened to David and how he had a mental snap. He's currently sitting in prison in the largest law firm in the world, and our foundation are trying to get him a new trial so we can get him moved into a mental hospital. But we have a number of beatings that have occurred. I was beaten twice at the Air Force Academy. I went back in 1973. I didn't talk about it for many, 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 many years. That's after my roommates and I received swastika notes under the door. I don't know what it was that I had done. I still don't know what happened. And the Air Force Academy, when our lawyers hit them with every document request we could find, claimed it never happened. Of course, there's a state judge who lives in this town who at the time was the OSI agent assigned to me, who said, if you need me to cancel my docket, Mikey, I'll do it, and we'll hold a news conference, because I know this happened to you. And I never said anything about it. I never said anything. I didn't do anything about it. I thought, other than when I was accused of doing it to myself, I struck an officer. I was 18 years old, and I struck an OSI major in the head with my fist. He went down, and I went running back to what was to be called Cy John Hall, the new dorm, and just waited to get shot. Nothing ever happened, ever. Nothing happened. And I still don't exactly know what happened, except that 30 years later, my own children were being called fucking Jews and being accused of total complicity in the execution of Jesus Christ by numerous people all over the Air Force Academy. Both my sons are graduates. I'm a graduate. My brother went here. My brother-in-law is a graduate. My daughter-in-law is a graduate. She went to Coronado High School here. Her father has disowned her. It was a very public thing in the Gazette. He's a fundamentalist Christian. So I'm her dad. We don't call her a daughter-in-law. She's my daughter. I have other daughters too. My father's a distinguished graduate from the Naval Academy. My family has 3 generations of military academy graduates in it. My nephew David just got back from his 4th combat tour as a U.S. Marine Gunnery Sergeant in Afghanistan. We have over 130 years of combined active duty military service in my immediate family from every major combat engagement this country's been in, from World War I to this current so-called global war on terror. I don't know what we're doing over there. But I do know this, the religious right would love it if I could be viewed as a Northern California tree-hugging, Chardonnay sipping, bleeding heart liberal Democrat, but I'm not. I spent 3.5 years in the Reagan White House as Reagan's lawyer. I was Ross Perot's lawyer. I am a registered Republican. I did vote for Clinton twice, Gore, Kerry, and Obama, but I think that Goldwater would have done the same thing if he was alive today. This is not the Republican Party that I remember. But I've got to be careful because we're a 501c3, so we can't endorse or oppose any candidate or party. But my view has always been, at this point now, that under Republicans, man exploits man. But under Democrats, it's just the opposite. We hired expensive lobbyists. No politician will touch us because we have HIV as far as they're concerned. I mean, it's so easy to sit there and go, Mikey Weinstein. At the drop of a hat, you say that. Ask cadets at the Air Force Academy. Oh my God, I mean, we're polarizing. I'm this horrible, terrible, hideous person. It happens to be true, but not for those reasons. So, look, I appreciate everybody coming out. I'm going to open it up for Q&A, and then we'll do some book signings. If you want to help, if you give a damn, buy as many copies of the book that you can. Read it, and then give it to other people. I'll sign it for you as much as I can, and we'll go from there. But I do thank you for coming out. I will say this to anybody who's a client here. If you feel like you want to say something, say something. I'm not going to point you out, and we'll go from there. Anybody who's on the opposite side, if you have a pair, why don't you stand up and talk to me and say it straight to my face without being a friend and stabbing me in the chest or the back. First question, anybody? Thank you. Yes, sir.
How do we actually buy books? Do we go over to the cash register and...
They do have some up there.
Right, but I mean, cash only, credit cards...
Anybody here from... Everything's fine. Credit cards, Amex, all that stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that's a... Any other questions about anything? Anybody? Yeah, cowboy hat. Yes, sir. Sorry.
It's not necessarily a question.
What's your name?
Ryan.
Ryan?
Yeah. It's not necessarily a question. I actually came here because of a friend. I haven't heard of you before. But I will tell you, just from the brief things you said, I'm appalled, and not by their character. I haven't heard much about this. I am a Christian. I go to church when I can. I'm not the greatest Christian. I mess up all the time, but I keep my nose out of other people's business. And I find that really disgusting that they're pretty much force-feeding people that stuff, So that's all I want to say.
I appreciate your comment. Thank you. Yes, sir.
20 years ago, I worked with the Bicentennial Commission for the state legislature.
Can you speak up a little bit so they can hear you over
here?
Okay.
My name's George Premenko, my wife Karen from Arvada, and 20 years ago I was an investigative reporter pro bono for the Denver Post, Rocky Mountain News, Time Magazine, Dick Woodbury, Scott Maxwell, and Associated Press. And the regular news media couldn't write about this movement coming into Colorado, because unless you write about something that is picked up in the courts, your newspaper is subject to frivolous harassment lawsuits. And in 1996, the Denver Post put out a full weekend edition on this movement coming into Colorado. They had 100 frivolous harassment lawsuits filed against the Denver Post. It took the Denver Post a year with their legal staff to get rid of all those frivolous harassment lawsuits just to harass the newspapers. And the Denver Post said they would never write again about this movement coming into Colorado and other states unless it was from a court case out of a district court or a federal docket of some kind, and then they could print it without being sued.
Can I just say one thing that's interesting what you're saying? If you take a look at the people that have blurbed my book, that endorsed it, there are some very well-known people there. One of whom is Dick Schlossberg, the former CEO and publisher of the Denver Post and the Los Angeles Times.
Yeah. And before Mikey came across the Air Force Academy, in my research, I never heard about Mikey until about 5 or 6 years of my contacting the Air Force Academy's IG office. I don't know Mike's last name at the IG office. I said, do you want me to keep this research that I'm coming across coming to your IG office at the Air Force Academy? They said, yeah, keep it coming, but we can't do any proactive stuff on it. Just keep it coming and we'll forward it to the, you know, the commander at the air base, just to be informed. And this is right about the time that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols blew up the Oklahoma Murrah bombing, the federal building. Going back to the news media, Kevin Flynn with the Rocky Mountain News could not print a story about Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols being at the Watkins Gun Club just east of Denver 2 weeks before they went and blew up the Murrah building, because the lawyers with the Denver Rocky Mountain News said, no, you've cleared 3 editorial approvals of your story, it's accurate, but we aren't going into court because we don't want those frivolous harassment lawsuits. So if you people think that you're getting the news media is intimidated by frivolous harassment lawsuits, and there's a lot of stories that go to the editorial boards here in Colorado Springs, Denver, Grand Junction, and the lawyers come in and say, no, you're not going to write it.
It really is amazing, and it's scary. I mean, I don't know where to find news anymore, other than I go to Truthdig or Truthout. I'll tell you something. I'm ashamed to tell you this. The op-ed that I wrote about the Koran burning, the accidental Koran burning, was going to be my first one for the Washington Post. And they came to me with this. They got scared. They got scared by it and said, can you pick another subject? After screaming at them, and I don't care if they take my column away, I released it 24 hours later through Truthout, and it's on our, which went to hundreds of, it's out everywhere. And we have a new subject for the Washington Post thing. But I'm not in love with the Washington Post. Yes, it's great that I have the voice there now, but that's a perfect example of what you just said, sir. And this is an unpopular subject. People, look, the bottom line is we don't really understand where we came from, where we're going, and what's going to happen. There are 34,000, I kid you not, different flavors, different denominations of Christianity, before we even get to Islam and Judaism, the other 10,000 religious faiths. So when you say I'm a Christian, what does that mean? Well, I don't care. I know I'll fight for your rights as long as you want to practice your faith within the bounds of the U.S. Constitution. That's all we're saying. We're not a complex meal, ladies and gentlemen. We're not Chateaubriand. We're a frickin' McDonald's hamburger. What is so hard about this? And these horrible things that are said about me and my family. I'll read you one of these. And this is the crap that my family has to see. It doesn't bother me, but if you go to the back of the book, and they can't. I mean, I'm sure they did really poorly on the verbal SATs. These people, they can't seem to write. They can't spell.
This is the letter writers, not the publisher.
Correct. Correct. All right, you fucking piece of shit Jew and your stinking Jew woman and inbred Jew children, they misspelled children, and Jew lover, traitor, daughter-in-law deserve to torture die. You filth Jew, liberal, America-hating, Jesus-hating bastard. Lord willing, none of us will have to wait long. America is too good for dirty Jew scum of your family and your commie foundation. Pretty much every word is misspelled. The one that upset.
But did they close it with God bless?
Yeah. There's one in here from the wife of a Green Beret. That, again, she doesn't spell too great either, but I'll let you read it. It gets to me every time that I read it. They make fun of. They want to remind me that because my wife has multiple sclerosis, that she's going to die all twisted and bent. I'm going to die forgotten and in poverty. They mix up the name of my daughter-in-law, Amanda, who's really we call her a daughter, the one who's went to Coronado High School and graduated from the Air Force Academy, and my daughter Amber, and everyone's going to die. Everyone's unless I just stop. And there's still time to accept their version of Jesus. When I did the evangelical TV thing the other day, they had a list of questions from all these churches across the country that people wanted to ask me. The big one was, what will it take to get you to stop? And I said, death. You know, and then even then, because I'm so heavily insured, I'm in great physical shape, thank God, but I can't get life insurance other than from Lloyd's. And the premiums there are insane because of these constant threats, which is why we have our, the security here. But if somebody pops me, I won't be here to enjoy it, but there'll be a lot of money coming to the foundation, so that may be the best fundraising thing to do. The problem is you got to find another maniac like me to want to do this 20 hours a day. Next question, anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Are your parents and grandparents alive, and how has this impacted their life, and how do they feel about you? Because I'm sure they were brought up in a different frame of reference.
It's a great question. The question was, my mom and dad, my grandparents are deceased, but my mom and dad live about 7 minutes from us in Albuquerque. Some of you in the room know my parents very well. They are very supportive, but they're scared. This was not what they don't know how to handle something like this. They're not boat rockers. It's not that they would sit back and not do anything, but they ask the question, well, why does it have to be you? Can't it be somebody else? And I'll tell you, I know this sounds like a terrible aspect of hubris. Remember, I told you I'm probably a jagnostic, a Jewish agnostic. I pray 3 times a day in Hebrew, but I'm pretty sure there's nobody up there. But I'm not sure, so just in case. Right. Even when I saw the Passion of the Christ, I felt so badly. They were beating Jesus up. I stood up and accepted Jesus halfway through. They would just stop beating him. I don't think Jesus thought he was sincere, but I would erase the entire 10 Commandments and replace them with Mikey's 5 Commandments. The first is love each other. Second, help each other. The third is don't perpetrate. The fourth is do not be a victim. And the fifth is the most important. Don't be a bystander. On my version, don't be an effing bystander. Don't sit back and do nothing, because we're human beings. We're supposed to help each other. This life goes by very, very fast. You blink and you're gone. I mean, there are people in this room that I've known since they were fetuses, and they're almost now, they're not fetuses anymore. And it goes by fast. Aren't we supposed to help each other? Yeah, I know we have to make our bosses happier. If you own your own business, you've got this problem, that problem. We're supposed to help each other. We're not supposed to let that 3rd grader get beaten up. We're not supposed to let that kid crawl into the street. We're not supposed to let dogs get poisoned. We're not supposed to let people be denigrated, dehumanized, marginalized, and made to feel worthless because they view the fact that we circulate blood, reflect light, and breathe as human beings here differently than this playbook says. We would fight the fundamentalist Muslims if we could find them. They're just not there. We've gone after some Muslims, we've gone after some Mormons, we've gone after some Jews, but in the main it's dominionist, fundamentalist Christians. And that's what we do, and we're not going to stop. And yes, we hear from the cadets at the Air Force Academy, or West Point, or the faculty at the Air Force Academy, or from places all over the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, the horrible things that are said about me and my family. My youngest son is an active duty captain in the Air Force. My son and daughter-in-law are in active reserve. My soon-to-be son-in-law just got his assignment last night. He'll be an instructor pilot in a UPT. He's a devout Christian who has a crucifix tattooed on his chest along with the 23rd Psalm. I want to get a tattoo, but I'll get divorced. My wife won't let me do it. I want the entire First Amendment. I need to be really drunk when I get it. But maybe just the first letters of each of the words. But I can't have that or a motorcycle. I can't even have a tattoo of a motorcycle. Next question.
Mikey, I neglected to pick up that copy of Hustler, so I'll ask the question, what were you wearing?
I had this great thong, but it had the First Amendment on it. Yes, ma'am.
What's your take on what we're seeing with the birth control, the Catholic Church, Rush Limbaugh, the Republican war on women?
Rush Limbaugh has, I've been a favorite topic of his for a while. I mean, he's referred to, it started a few years ago where I got 1 million phone calls in the space of 30 minutes because he went on for me about me being a pacifist and an aider and abettor to Al-Qaeda. Now, I like Rush. If he had spent 1 nanosecond wearing the uniform of his country, as I have done and members of my family have done, he'd have more credibility. But you know why he can't? Rush Limbaugh has a broken butt. He has an anal fissure. He actually was born with that. So that big fat piece of shit cannot serve the U.S. military. But he can call women sluts if they want to have, make sure they can get contraceptives if they're in the U.S. military or anything else that they're doing under a health program. I saw today a couple hours ago, he lost 5 sponsors, which I think is great. Because someone decided not to be a bystander. And as I said before, it's not about criticizing your warm, cuddly Jesus or Moses or a la teddy bear. It's about supporting a constitution that allows everybody to be equal with what they want to do. And right now, there are plenty of places to proselytize. If someone wanted to come up here right now on Port Richards and proselytize any one of us, welcome to the free marketplace of ideas of America. We allow that here. But if you're working at Starbucks and your shift manager starts, that violates Title VII of the U.S. Code. That person has control over you. If you're working at KFC or at IBM, or at USAA, I'm sorry, that violates the U.S. Code. But in the U.S. military, it's a very special environment. I mean, having sexual intercourse with someone other than your spouse, adultery, is a felony in the U.S. military. I've tried and defended those cases. It's a felony. If you're told to go to the base dentist at 4 p.m. and you don't go, that's a felony in the U.S. military. And it affects my daughter is a GS5. She's a senior at the University of New Mexico, about to get married to that guy I told you about who just graduated from pilot training or is about to graduate. She's also an Air Force civilian employee. They are constrained in many different ways. So the bottom line is, the people we're fighting, fundamentalist Christians, have 4 particular stenches about them that will assault your nostrils the same way it would as if you walked into a ditch, or as we say it in my native New Mexico, an arroyo, on a hot August day, and your nostrils are assaulted with the stench of the rotting corpses of 10,000 swine. How's that for a nice picture for you? The first stench is virulent homophobia. The second is virulent Islamophobia. The third is virulent anti-Semitism. And the last is virulent misogyny. Women, they're really basically good for, you know what they're good for. And they can argue all you want back and forth about it, but they really have a problem with women. So does Orthodox Judaism, so does Wahhabist fundamentalist Islam. Those Abrahamic faiths, we have some issues there. But, within the bounds of the Constitution, they can do what they want to do. But yes, I get asked this question a lot. At Boulder last night, one of our clients stood up, a young Jewish woman who had been in jet fighter training with the U.S. Navy, a George Washington University graduate. She was doing great. She was #1 in her class, but she suddenly had started, her IPs that were instructor pilots started failing her time after time. And she went in one day with the instruction book saying, she was on the edge. What do I need to do? I've studied this. I'm doing this fine. And her senior officer took the book out of her hand and said, "You are studying and it's in the wrong book." And he gave her the New Testament. She came to us, and it's a horrible story, except it's turned out great. She's now a first-year law student at University of Colorado. And another one of the people that blurbed the book is Gene Nickel, the former dean of the law school of the University of Colorado. Dick Lamb, I might add, the former governor, 3 terms here, is on our advisory board. Gene Nickel is also the former dean of the law school at UNC Chapel Hill, and the former president of the College of William and Mary. You like MASH? Mike Farrell is one of my best friends. He blurbed the book. Ed Asner blurbed the book. But so did, they're viewed as lefty liberals. But so did Jack Rives. Jack was the top JAG, a 3-star general, top JAG for 4 years in the U.S. Air Force. Now he didn't, when he retired, didn't go out and play golf in Florida. He's the head of a small organization that you may have heard of called the American Bar Association. Why are these people who are Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, tall, short, fat, thin, well, why are they all supporting us? Well, that's exactly right. They believe in the First Amendment. Next question. Anybody? I'd be happy to sign as many books as you let me if you buy them. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'll say one last thing to you. I did an interview not too long ago with Dan Rather. He no longer works for CBS. He works for Mark Cuban and HDNet. Cuban's the guy that owns the Dallas Mavericks. And it was a great interview. I've been warned, but everyone knows Dan Rather always has a zinger question at the end. And the 3.5-hour interview, at the end of it, he asked me, and I knew it was coming. He said, "Mikey, you and your family and foundation are often criticized for being unpatriotic. because you're fighting the Pentagon during a time of war. How do you respond to this? Now, normally we come up with these great responses. Like if my wife says something to me, I'll think of something great, but it'll be like a week later. You know? And, but this time I was ready. And I said, Dan, I don't have to come up with a response because the great late historian Howard Zinn, who wrote The People's History of the United States, a great book, The History of the United States from the perspective of people of color and women and Native Americans and Unionists, he said it best, and that is, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Well, we are the demanders of the commanders. We are the dukes of dissent, and we're not going to go away. Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to speak.